Ambassador Taehyun stood in the massive chamber and tried not to look nervous. Around him, thousands of alien beings filled the seats that rose up like a giant stadium. Some had wings. Some glowed with strange lights. Others looked like walking crystals or floating clouds. He had never seen so many different kinds of life in one place. This was the Galactic Council, and Earth had finally been invited to join. Taehyun wore his best suit, though it felt plain compared to the colorful robes and strange armor worn by the other ambassadors. Beside him stood Dr. Hana, a young woman with glasses who kept checking her tablet nervously. She was Earth's expert on alien languages and history. Behind them both, Commander Jisoo watched everything with sharp eyes. She was in charge of keeping them safe. "We are ready to begin," a voice boomed through the chamber. It came from everywhere at once, translated into every language by the station's computers. Taehyun stepped forward to a glowing platform in the center of the room. He cleared his throat and began to speak. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council, I am Ambassador Taehyun of Earth. We come in peace seeking friendship and knowledge." He held up a data chip. "Here are our planet's coordinates and all information about our world. We hope to learn from you and share what we know." A tall being made of living crystal floated down from the highest seat. This was High Chronicler Velthar, keeper of all galactic records. His body pulsed with soft blue light as he took the chip from Taehyun's hand. "A standard procedure," Velthar said in a voice like wind chimes. "We will register your star system in our database. It should only take a moment." The crystal being moved to a large holographic display that appeared in the air. He inserted the chip and data began flowing across the screen. Star maps appeared showing Earth's sun and its position in the galaxy. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then Velthar's body flashed bright red. "No," the crystal being whispered. "It cannot be." The blue lights in his body turned to yellow, then orange, then a warning red that pulsed faster and faster. Around the chamber, other aliens began to notice. Whispers spread like fire. "What is wrong?" Taehyun asked, stepping closer. Velthar's hands shook as he worked the controls. "The coordinates. I am cross-referencing them with the ancient archives." His voice was no longer calm. It shook with something that sounded like fear. The holographic display changed. Ancient text appeared, written in languages so old that even the translation computers struggled. But slowly words formed that everyone could read. "Preserve World 7 Omega." Velthar read aloud. "In the old tongue it is called the Crucible of Last Resort." The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens jumped from their seats. Some ran for the exits. Others collapsed where they stood, overcome with shock. A being that looked like a giant bird flew straight into a wall in its panic. Security alarms began to wail. "Everyone calm down," Taehyun shouted, but his voice was lost in the noise. Dr. Hana grabbed his arm. "What is happening? Why do they know about Earth?" Commander Jisoo had her hand on her weapon, ready for anything. "We need to get out of here." "No." Taehyun pushed away from them. "We need answers." He ran toward Velthar, who was still standing at the display, his body now a deep purple color. "What does this mean? What is Preserve World 7 Omega?" The crystal being turned to face him. For the first time, Taehyun could see what looked like eyes in the translucent face. They were filled with an emotion he recognized. Terror. "You should not be here," Velthar said quietly. "Your species should not exist outside your planet." "Explain," Commander Jisoo demanded, moving up beside them. Now, Velthar looked at the three humans. Then he looked at the panicking crowd around them. Slowly, he raised his arms. His body began to glow with a bright white light that cut through the chaos. The light spread across the chamber, and slowly, the noise began to die down. "Everyone will return to their seats," Velthar announced. "We must address this properly." It took several minutes, but the aliens began to settle. Many still looked ready to run. Others stared at the three humans with wide eyes full of fear. Some pointed and whispered. When the chamber was finally quiet again, Velthar spoke. 3 million years ago, there was a civilization called the Precursors. They were the most advanced beings ever known. They could shape stars and create life itself. He gestured at the holographic display. Images appeared showing beautiful beings of pure energy, building wonders across the galaxy. The Precursors created many things before they vanished. One of their final projects was called the Death World Protocol. Velthar's voice grew heavy. They selected 12 planets across the galaxy. Each was engineered to be as dangerous as possible while still supporting life. The images changed. showing hostile worlds with active volcanoes, savage storms, and terrible predators. The precursors seeded these worlds with the most aggressive life forms they could find. They created extinction events. They made the climate unstable. They filled the oceans with monsters and the lands with killers. Velthar turned to look directly at Taehyun, and then they locked these worlds away behind warning beacons and waited. Waited for what? Dr. Hana asked, her voice barely a whisper. For evolution to create the ultimate survivor species. Velthar brought up new images. They showed creatures that made the humans gasp. Giant reptiles with teeth like swords, massive beasts covered in armor, flying predators with wingspans wider than a house. These were the apex predators of your world millions of years ago. Any one of them would be considered a weapon of mass destruction on most planets in the galaxy. He paused, letting that sink in, then continued. 11 of the Death World projects failed. The planets either became completely lifeless, or the species that evolved had to be destroyed because they were too dangerous to ever leave their worlds. And the 12th? Taehyun asked, though he already knew the answer. Earth? Velthar said simply. Your planet is the only Death World project that succeeded. The only one where a species evolved that was both deadly enough to survive such a world and intelligent enough to eventually reach the stars. The chamber fell into complete silence. Every alien eye was fixed on the three humans. The precursors left a warning beacon around your system. Velthar continued. It said, do not disturb. Evolution in progress. Apex predator incubation zone. That beacon has been broadcasting for 3 million years. His light pulsed with a dark blue color. Until 3 months ago when it suddenly stopped. Commander Jisu's eyes went wide. That was when we activated our first faster-than-light drive. The beacon was programmed to deactivate when the local species achieved interstellar capability, Velthar confirmed. The precursors meant for you to emerge eventually. But the question that terrifies us is simple. He looked at each of them in turn. Why did they create you? What threat did they foresee that required the cultivation of a species from a death world? Before anyone could answer, warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber. A new alarm, different from before, began to sound. It was a deep, pulsing tone that made Taehyun's chest vibrate. A young alien ran into the chamber, its tentacles waving frantically. Chronicler, long-range sensors have detected something at the galaxy's edge. Velthar moved quickly to a control panel. His fingers danced across the holographic buttons. The main display changed, showing a star map of the entire galaxy. At the very edge, something was moving. Something massive. What is that? Dr. Hana asked. The crystal being's light flickered and nearly went out. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with ancient fear. The Void Swarm. It has returned. Around the chamber, species that had been arguing about the humans moments before now forgot them entirely. They stared at the display with expressions of horror. Some began to cry. Others fainted. Taehyun looked at the display, at the dark mass moving toward the galaxy, and then at Velthar. What is the Void Swarm? The crystal being turned to face him, and in that moment Taehyun understood. He saw it in Velthar's eyes, in the way every alien in the room had gone silent with dread. The reason you were created, Velthar said quietly. The Council gave Earth 72 hours to explain itself. That was all. 3 days before, they would seal Earth's star system behind an energy barrier and leave humanity trapped forever. Taehyun sat in a small room with his team, trying to understand what was happening. Through the window, he could see warships from 100 different species gathering around the station. Their weapons were pointed at the single Earth ship that had brought them here. They are afraid of us, Dr. Hana said softly. She had been reading through files all night, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Everything in the archives talks about the death worlds, about how dangerous they were meant to be. Commander Jisu paced back and forth like a caged animal. We have done nothing wrong. We came here in peace. It does not matter, a new voice said. Professor Minho entered the room looking tired. He was Earth's top expert on human evolution, brought up from the planet on an emergency shuttle. They judge us not by what we have done, but by what we are capable of doing. Then we show them who we really are, Taehyun said firmly. We show them the truth. The next morning, Taehyun stood before the council again. This time, the mood was different. The chamber was less crowded. Many species had refused to attend, too frightened to be in the same room as humans. Those who remained kept their distance, sitting in the furthest seats. High Chronicler Velthar was there, along with a new figure. Archivist Kelmore was an insect-like being with dozens of eyes and delicate antennae. He specialized in studying precursor artifacts and looked both terrified and fascinated by the humans. "You may begin," Velthar said coldly. Dr. Hanna stepped forward first. She and Kelmore had spent the entire night in the deepest archives searching for answers. Now she activated a holographic display. "We found the full records of the Death World Protocol," she began. Her voice was steady, professional. The precursors did not just want to create survivors. They wanted to create the ultimate survivors. Images appeared in the air. They showed Earth as it had been millions of years ago. Volcanoes erupted constantly. Ice ages came and went. Meteors struck the planet with terrible force. Earth experienced 5 major extinction events, Hanna continued. Each one killed most of the life on the planet. But each time life came back. It evolved. It adapted. It became stronger. Kelmore spoke up, his voice clicking and buzzing. "No other planet in Council space has experienced more than one extinction event. Your world has survived 5. That alone makes it unique." Professor Minho took over. He brought up images of human ancestors. Apes that walked upright, early humans that hunted with stone tools, modern humans that built cities and spaceships. "We did not just survive," Minho explained. "We learned to dominate. Humans are not the strongest species that evolved on Earth. We are not the fastest or the most deadly, but we outlasted them all." He showed images of ancient animals, giant bears, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, creatures that could tear a human apart easily. "We hunted them," Minho said simply. "We hunted the hunters. We used tools, teamwork, and our ability to think. We chased animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We set traps. We used fire, and slowly, we became the apex predators of our world." The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. An ambassador from a peaceful plant-based species made a sound like wind through leaves. "This only proves our fears. You are predators. We are survivors," Taehyun corrected, stepping forward. "There is a difference." Before he could continue, alarms rang through the station again. This time, they were louder, more urgent. "The swarm has attacked an outer colony," a voice announced. "Counselor Station Harmony 7 is under assault." The main display changed. It showed a beautiful planet with green forests and blue oceans. Then the image changed to show something else. A dark cloud was descending from space. It was not made of gas or dust. It was made of living things. Millions, maybe billions of creatures working as one. They fell on the colony like a wave of darkness. Within minutes, the first city went silent. Then the second. Then the third. "Send the defense fleet," Velthar ordered. Everyone watched as council warships arrived at the colony. They were sleek and beautiful, designed more for exploration than war. They had been enough to keep the peace for 50,000 years. They were not enough now. The swarm adapted to every weapon the fleet used. Energy shields meant nothing. The creatures simply flowed around them. Stunning weapons had no effect. The swarm did not feel pain or fear. Within an hour, the entire defense fleet was destroyed or retreating in chaos. The planet below went dark. 5 billion people gone in less than 2 hours. The council chamber fell silent. Many of the ambassadors were crying. Others sat frozen in shock. They had not seen real war in thousands of years. Commander Jisoo watched the display with hard eyes. She had been a soldier on Earth. She had seen combat, and she recognized what she was watching. "They have no idea how to fight." "Neither do we," Velthar said quietly. "The precursors barely stopped the swarm last time. They pushed it into dark space, but they could not destroy it. And now they are gone. We have no weapons that can stop this." "Yes, you do," Taehyun said. All eyes turned to him. "You have us." The chamber erupted in argument. Some ambassadors refused outright. Humans were too dangerous to trust. Others argued that they had no choice. More colonies were being attacked. The swarm was spreading. Admiral Jiwan arrived from Earth with a fleet of 200 ships. It was every warship humanity had built. Compared to the Council's hundreds of thousands of vessels, it was tiny. But when the Council members saw the Earthships, they understood why the precursors had created humans. Earthships were not elegant. They were not beautiful. They were built for one purpose only: war. They carried nuclear weapons, kinetic missiles, and weapons the Council had never imagined. They were crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for combat. We did not want to be warriors, Admiral Jiwan told the Council. But our world made us this way. Every human alive is descended from survivors, from people who faced impossible odds and refused to give up. She brought up footage of human military exercises. Council members watched in horror as human soldiers ran through hostile environments, going days without sleep, pushing their bodies beyond what should be possible. How can they endure such suffering? An ambassador asked. Because they choose to, Jiwan answered. Because someone needs to stand between danger and those who cannot fight. That is what makes us human. Dr. Taewoo, a xenobiologist who had been studying captured swarm specimens, made a crucial discovery. The swarm learns by consuming its prey, he announced. Every species it has absorbed, every planet it has conquered, all that knowledge is now part of it. It knows everything about the Council, every defensive strategy, every weapon. Then how can we fight it? Velthar asked. It has never faced humans before, Taewoo replied. It has no records of Earth or our tactics. We are the unknown variable. The Council voted. It was close, but fear of the swarm won over fear of humanity. They agreed to a joint command. Humans would lead the military response. Captain Yunji, commander of Earth's experimental warship Indomitable, was put in charge of the first battle group. She studied the swarm's attack patterns and shook her head. They fight like a computer program, predictable, efficient, but not creative. What do you suggest? Asked Supreme Coordinator Thex, the head of Council Military Forces. Yunji smiled, and Thex felt a chill run down his spine. It was not a cruel smile, but it was the smile of a predator. We show them what chaos looks like, Yunji said. The first human-led battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The swarm expected standard tactics, defensive formations, measured responses. Instead, Captain Yunji sent in kamikaze drones loaded with nuclear warheads. She used biological weapons designed to disrupt the swarm's communication. When the swarm adapted to her missiles, she rammed ships into them at relativistic speeds. And when the swarm concentrated its forces to crush her fleet, Yunji did something unthinkable. She detonated the star at the system's center, destroying the swarm's hive node in a supernova. The cost was terrible. 40% of the human fleet was destroyed. Thousands of soldiers died. But the swarm retreated for the first time in recorded history. When Yunji returned to the station, battered and wounded, the Council did not know whether to celebrate or be terrified. She had won, but the methods she used were beyond anything they had imagined. Velthar approached her as medics worked on her injuries. You destroyed an entire star system to win a single battle. I saved 3 star systems by sacrificing 1, Yunji corrected. That is war. You make hard choices and live with the consequences. The crystal being looked at her for a long moment. The precursors created you to be weapons. No, Yunji said quietly. They created us to survive. We choose to use that ability to protect others. There is a difference. That night, as Council strategists studied the battle footage, they came to a terrible realization. The humans had not just won. They had done it while following rules of engagement. They had evacuated civilians. They had given enemy forces chances to surrender. They had mourned their dead. The precursors had not created monsters. They had created warriors who chose to have honor even in the darkness of war. But the swarm was vast. One battle meant nothing. The war spread across the galaxy like a disease. Every day brought news of more colonies falling to the swarm. Every night, refugees fled toward the core worlds, carrying stories of horror that made even hardened soldiers weep. The Galactic Council had fought wars before, thousands of years ago. But those were small conflicts, border disputes between neighboring species. They had rules. They had honor. They ended with treaties and celebrations. This was different. The swarm did not negotiate. It did not stop. It consumed everything in its path and grew stronger with each victory. Taehyun stood on the command deck of the station, watching battle reports flood in. Beside him, Dr. Hana worked at a console, her fingers flying across the holographic keys. She had been searching the precursor archives for anything that might help. I found something, she said suddenly. Her voice was tight with tension. The complete precursor project files. She brought up documents that were millions of years old. The text scrolled past, translated by the station's computers. Taehyun read it and felt his blood run cold. They knew. he whispered. The precursors knew the swarm would return. The files revealed everything. 3 million years ago, the precursors had been the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had explored every corner of known space. They had made first contact with thousands of species and guided them toward peace. Then the void swarm emerged from dark space. It was not from their galaxy. It was not even from their universe. It was something that had consumed its home and came searching for more. The war between the precursors and the swarm lasted for 1,000 years. Entire sectors were burned to ash. Species went extinct. Stars were extinguished. The precursors used every weapon they had, every technology they possessed. It was barely enough. They managed to push the swarm back into dark space, but they could not destroy it. And they knew it would return someday. So they made us, Taehyun said quietly. They created the Death Worlds as a backup plan. They were trying to create a species that could finish what they started. It is worse than that, Hana said. She brought up more files. There were 12 Death World projects. We already knew that. But look what happened to the others. Images appeared. Worlds torn apart from the inside. Species that evolved into nightmares so terrible that the precursors had to sterilize their entire star systems. Project 1 created a hive species that devoured its own planet and everything nearby. Project 5 produced a race of telepaths so powerful they could control minds across light years. Project 8 resulted in creatures that could survive in the vacuum of space and fed on radiation. She looked at Taehyun with haunted eyes. Every single one had to be destroyed. The precursors tried 12 times to create the perfect warrior species. 11 times they created monsters. And the 12th time they created us, Taehyun finished. The weight of that knowledge hung heavy between them. Humanity was not special because they were peaceful. They were special because they were the only Death World species that was not too dangerous to exist. Commander Jisoo entered the deck, her uniform torn and covered in burn marks. She had just returned from a ground mission, evacuating civilians from a contested world. The Council wants to see all of us now. In the Council chamber, the mood was desperate. Half the seats were empty. Those species who could flee had already left for their home systems, trying to save their own people. Those who remained looked exhausted and hopeless. We are losing, Velthar said simply. The swarm has taken 40 systems in the past week. At this rate, it will reach the core worlds within a month. Supreme Coordinator Thex, who commanded the Council's military, looked like he had aged decades. His people, a collective consciousness species, had lost connection with hundreds of thousands of nodes. Parts of himself were being consumed by the swarm. The human tactics work, Thex said, but we do not have enough humans. Your species numbers only 12 billion. We need trillions of soldiers to hold the line. Then train your own people, Admiral Jiwon suggested. She had been coordinating the war effort from her flagship. We can teach you what we know. We have tried, Thex replied. Council species do not think like you do. We have lived in peace for so long that we cannot adapt fast enough. When we try to use human tactics, we hesitate. We question. We fail, it was true. Taehyun had watched Council soldiers try to follow Earth military doctrine. They could learn the movements, memorize the strategies. But when the moment came to act, to make the hard choices that war demanded, they froze. Council species had evolved on peaceful worlds. War was not in their nature. They could fight when cornered, but they could not wage the kind of relentless creative warfare that humans had perfected over thousands of years. We need more time, Velthar said. Time to evacuate civilians. Time to fortify the core worlds. Time to find a weakness in the swarm. Then we buy you time, Captain Unji said. She had been standing quietly at the back of the chamber, listening. Now she stepped forward and every eye turned to her. She was young for a ship captain, barely 30 years old. Her uniform was simple, her manner direct, but there was something in her eyes that made even the ancient beings of the Council pay attention. Earth Fleet will hold the line at the Barrier Nebula. Yoonji continued. It is a natural choke point. The swarm will have to come through there to reach the core worlds. We can make them bleed for every meter of space. You cannot hold that position, Thex said. Our simulations show the swarm will send 10,000 ships against you. You have less than 200 vessels remaining. Then we will destroy 10,000 ships, Yoonji replied calmly. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what she was proposing. It was a suicide mission. The Earth fleet would be annihilated. But they might buy enough time for the evacuation. I will not order my people to certain death, Velthar said. You are not ordering us, Admiral Jiwon said, stepping up beside Yunji. We are volunteering. One by one, the other human representatives stood. Commander Jisoo, Professor Minho, Dr. Taewoo, even Dr. Hana, who had never been a soldier, rose to her feet. This is what humans do, Taehyun said quietly. When there is a wall between the innocent and danger, we become that wall. It is not because we are weapons, it is because we choose to protect others. Velthar's crystalline body pulsed with colors that had no translation, grief perhaps, or respect. If you do this, you will not survive. The swarm does not take prisoners. It will consume you all. We know, Yunji said simply. But then something unexpected happened. An ambassador from the peaceful plant species stood up. We will go with you, Moore stood. A bird-like alien who had never raised a weapon. An aquatic species that had spent 1,000 years as artists. Even some of the insect beings who communicated through scent and had no concept of individual identity. You have shown us something we forgot, the plant ambassador said, her voice like rustling leaves. That peace is not the absence of violence. It is the willingness to stand against it. We may not fight like you, but we can stand beside you. Thex looked at the volunteers with surprise and something that might have been hope. Very well. We will give you every ship we can spare, every weapon we have, but it will not be enough. It never is, Jiwon said with a sad smile. That is why we fight anyway. The preparations took 3 days. The Earth fleet, reinforced with volunteers from 20 different species, moved into position at the Barrier Nebula. It was a region of dense gas clouds and unstable energy fields. Perfect for an ambush. Engineer Junho had been working around the clock, combining human weapons with Council technology. He created hybrid shields that could withstand both kinetic and energy attacks. He modified missiles to carry Council nanoswarms that would disrupt swarm communication. He even found a way to weaponize the nebula itself, turning the gas clouds into massive bombs. On the flagship Indomitable, Captain Yunji gathered her command staff. They were a mix of humans and aliens now. Some had been enemies weeks ago, too afraid of humanity to share a room with them. Now they worked side by side. The swarm will come in 3 waves, Yunji explained, pointing at the tactical display. First wave will be scouts testing our defenses. Second wave will be the main assault, trying to overwhelm us with numbers. Third wave will be their command ships, the intelligence that controls the hive. We let the scouts through, Jiwon said. Let them think they understand our positions. Then we hit the second wave with everything we have. Conventional weapons, nuclear strikes, the nebula bombs. We hurt them badly enough that they have to commit their command ships. And then, asked a council officer, a being made of living water. Then we do what humans do best, Yunji said. We improvise. The swarm arrived right on schedule. The first wave came like a dark tide. Thousands of creatures moving in perfect formation. The Allied fleet let them pass, tracking them but not firing. The scouts scanned the nebula, mapped the fleet positions, and retreated. Then the second wave came. 10,000 ships, just as predicted. Maybe more. The scanners could not get an accurate count through the interference of the nebula. All ships, Yunji broadcast, light them up. The battle that followed would be studied for generations. The Allied fleet fought with a coordination that should have been impossible. Human ships used aggressive tactics, drawing the swarm into killing zones. The revelation about the swarm changed everything. It spread through the Allied fleet like wildfire, then across Council space. Species that had been ready to fight to extinction suddenly faced an impossible question. Could they destroy another civilization that was only trying to survive? Taehyun called an emergency meeting of the Council. The chamber was full again, but the mood was different than before. There was no more panic, no more terror. Instead, there was confusion and conflict. We must destroy them, insisted an ambassador from a species that had lost 2 colonies. They have killed trillions. They will kill trillions more if we show mercy. But they are victims too, argued another, one of the plant beings who had fought at the Barrier Nebula. They did not choose to become what they are. Extinction made them this way. The debate raged for hours. Some wanted total war. Others wanted to find a peaceful solution. Many were simply exhausted, tired of fighting, tired of making impossible choices. Commander Jisoo listened to it all with growing frustration. Finally, she stood and spoke, her voice cutting through the argument. You are asking the wrong question. The chamber fell silent. Jisoo rarely spoke in council meetings, preferring action to words. When she did speak, people listened. You want to know if we should destroy them or save them, Jisoo continued. But the real question is this. Can we live in a galaxy where we destroy species that are only trying to survive? Because if we do that, we become no better than the threat we are fighting. Velthar's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful colors. Then what do you suggest, Commander? The swarm will not stop attacking. Every day we debate, more people die. We fight, Jisoo said simply. But we fight to win a different kind of victory. Dr. Taewoo stepped forward, bringing up holographic displays of his research. I have been studying the swarm's biology and psychology. Their hive mind is incredibly complex but also fragile. It is like a computer program that has been running for millions of years without stopping. It cannot change itself from the inside. But maybe we can change it from the outside, Dr. Hana added. She had been working with Taewoo, combining their knowledge. The precursors left technology behind. Tools they used to shape life itself. If we could access that technology, maybe we could separate the swarm's consciousness from its consuming instinct. That is impossible, an alien scientist objected. The swarm is too large, too spread out. You would need to affect every creature simultaneously. Engineer Junho smiled, and everyone who knew him felt a chill. That smile meant he had an idea. A dangerous, brilliant, impossible idea. Not if we target the command nodes, Junho said. He brought up a new display showing the structure of the swarm. The hive mind works through central processors, massive bioships that coordinate everything. We saw them at the Barrier Nebula. If we could modify those ships, broadcast a signal that rewrites their core programming, we might be able to change the entire swarm. Might, Velthar repeated. And if you fail? If this makes them stronger or more aggressive, then we are no worse off than we are now, Captain Yunji said. She had been standing at the back of the chamber, listening to everything. But if it works, we save both civilizations. Ours and theirs. The vote was close. Many species wanted the certainty of total war over the uncertainty of mercy. But in the end, the Council decided to try. They would give the humans and their allies one chance to save the swarm, but they had to find it first. The swarm had retreated after the Battle of the Barrier Nebula. It was hiding somewhere in dark space, regrouping and planning its next attack. General Sora led the search. She commanded the ground forces, soldiers who had been trained to fight in the most hostile environments. Now she adapted those skills to hunting an enemy across the galaxy. The swarm needs resources, Sora explained to her team. It needs raw materials to build more ships, more creatures. So we find the resource-rich systems it would target and lay traps. It took 2 weeks, but they found it. The swarm was harvesting an asteroid field on the edge of known space. Millions of creatures worked like ants, breaking down rock and metal, feeding it into massive processing ships. That is our target, Junho said, pointing at the largest ship. That is a command node. If we can capture it intact, I can modify it. Capture, Admiral G1 repeated. Not destroy. Do you understand how much harder that makes our job? Yes, Junho said simply. But it is necessary. The assault was planned with typical human precision and typical Council idealism. It would be the most complex military operation ever attempted. They needed to disable the command ship without destroying it, fight off the rest of the swarm, and protect Junho while he worked. Hundreds of ships participated, thousands of soldiers, but the one person who would matter most was Junho himself. If he failed, if his modifications did not work, everyone would die for nothing. The attack began at dawn, though in space, there was no real dawn. It was a human tradition, fighting when the sun rose. It gave them hope. The Allied fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly on top of the swarm. They had no time for subtlety. Surprise was their only advantage. Captain Yunji led the charge in the Indomitable. Her ship had been rebuilt after the last battle, reinforced with Council technology and human determination. She flew straight at the command ship, her weapons blazing. The swarm responded instantly. Thousands of creatures swarmed toward the attacking fleet. They moved like a living wave, coordinated and deadly. General Sora launched her ground forces. Armored soldiers and drop pods fell toward the command ship like rain. They hit the hull with massive impacts, cutting their way inside. These were humans and aliens fighting side by side now, using tactics that combined the best of both worlds. Inside the command ship, the fighting was brutal. The swarm defended every corridor, every room. Sora's soldiers pushed forward anyway, clearing a path for Junho. "We are taking heavy casualties," Jisoo reported from her command post. She was coordinating all ground forces, watching as dots disappeared from her tactical display. Each dot was a soldier. Each one was someone's friend, someone's family. "Keep pushing," Sora ordered. She was in the thick of the fighting, her armor covered in burns and scratches. "We are almost there." They fought their way to the ship's core. It was a massive chamber filled with pulsing organic technology. At the center was the command node itself, a creature the size of a building with neural connections spreading out like a web. Junho ran to it, his team of engineers and scientists following. They set up equipment around the node, connecting cables and establishing data links. Around them, soldiers held the line against waves of swarm creatures. "How long?" Sora asked, firing her weapon at an approaching creature. 20 minutes, Junho replied, his hands moving across holographic controls. "Maybe 30. You have 10, Sora said. "After that, we will be overrun." Junho worked faster. His fingers flew across the controls. He was accessing precursor technology that had not been used in millions of years. One wrong command and the entire ship could explode. Outside, the space battle was not going well. The swarm had brought in reinforcements. The Allied fleet was being pushed back. Ships were dying. Admiral Jiwon ordered a retreat, but Captain Yunji refused. "We do not leave until Junho completes his mission," Yunji said. "Your ship is falling apart," Jiwon argued. "You will die if you stay." "Then I die," Yunji said calmly. "That is what it means to stand between the innocent and danger." Inside the command ship, Junho found what he was looking for. The core programming of the swarm, the ancient code that had been written when they merged into a hive mind. It was beautiful in its complexity, tragic in its purpose. "I can see it now," Junho whispered. "I can see what they were before. They were artists, philosophers. They had a civilization based on collective consciousness, on sharing thoughts and dreams. Then their stars started dying. They had to choose between extinction and transformation. Can you change them back?" Dr. Taewoo asked. He was there too, helping with the biological components of the modification. "I do not know," Junho admitted, "but I can try to give them a choice. The one thing they have not had in millions of years." He entered the final commands. The equipment around the command node began to glow. Energy pulsed through the organic circuitry. The node itself started to convulse. "We need to go," Sora shouted. Now they ran. Soldiers covering their retreat fell back in organized chaos. Dropships descended through the fighting, picking up survivors. General Sora was the last one out, firing her weapon until the very moment the ship's doors closed. In space, Captain Yunji saw the command ship begin to change. Its lights shifted from angry red to confused blue. The swarm creatures attacking her fleet suddenly stopped moving. They hung in space, motionless. Did it work? Someone asked over the communication channel. No one knew. For a long moment, nothing happened. The entire battlefield was frozen, waiting. Then the command ship spoke. Not through radio or any technology. It spoke directly into the minds of every being present. The voice was old and tired and filled with endless sorrow. "What have you done to us?" it asked. "We gave you a choice," Junho replied, his voice transmitted from the dropship. "You can continue as you are, consuming everything alone forever. Or you can let go. Let your consciousness divide again. Return to what you were." 5 years had passed since the swarm was freed from its hive mind. 5 years of struggle, rebuilding, and slow, painful progress toward peace. Ambassador Taehyun stood in the new council chamber, built on a space station that orbited Earth's moon. The old chamber on Harmonix Prime had been destroyed during the war. This new one was different, simpler, built with cooperation from dozens of species, including the refugees from the former swarm. He looked older now. They all did. War did that to people, aged them in ways that time alone could not. But his eyes were still sharp, still filled with hope. "The Council recognizes Earth," High Chronicler Velthar announced. His crystalline body no longer flashed with warning colors when he looked at humans. Now it pulsed with warm, friendly light. "Full membership status. All rights and responsibilities included." The chamber erupted in applause. It was a strange sound. Different species showing approval in different ways. Some clapped. Others hummed or clicked or released pleasant scents. But it all meant the same thing. "Welcome." Taehyun felt emotions swell in his chest. It had been a long journey from that first day, when humanity was revealed to be from a death world, when the galaxy had wanted to lock them away forever. We accept, he said formally, and we promise to uphold the values that the Council stands for: peace, cooperation, protection of all life. After the ceremony, Tae-hyun walked through the station's corridors. Everywhere he looked, he saw change. Human soldiers training alongside alien recruits, not teaching them to be killers, but teaching them to protect themselves and others. The training was tough but fair, designed to build resilience without creating monsters. He passed a classroom where Dr. Hana was teaching. She had become the head of the new Galactic Academy, where young beings from across the galaxy came to learn. Her subject today was human history, but not the parts about war and conquest. Humans almost destroyed themselves many times, Hana was explaining to her students. A mix of species from a dozen worlds. Nuclear weapons. Climate change. Pandemics. We came so close to extinction so many times, but each time we chose to work together instead of giving up. That is the real lesson of Earth. Not that we can fight, but that we can choose not to. A student raised a tentacle. But teacher, you did fight. You fought the swarm. Yes, Hana agreed, because sometimes protecting others requires fighting. But fighting is always the last choice, never the first one. The galaxy needed warriors when the swarm came. But what the galaxy needs now are teachers, healers, builders. Those are harder jobs, but more important ones. Tae-hyun smiled and moved on. He found Commander Jisoo in the training center, working with a group of mixed species soldiers. She was showing them hand-to-hand combat techniques, but she kept stopping to emphasize control. The goal is not to hurt your opponent, Jisoo explained. The goal is to stop the threat with minimum harm. You have to be strong enough to protect, but wise enough to show mercy. One of her students, a large reptilian being, struggled with the concept. But in real combat, mercy is weakness. No, Jisoo said firmly. In real combat, mercy is strength. Anyone can kill. It takes real power to choose not to. She demonstrated a hold that immobilized the student without causing pain. See, I could hurt you right now. But I do not need to. You are no longer a threat, so there is no reason for more violence. The student thought about this, then nodded slowly. Understanding came gradually, especially for species that had never thought about such things before. Tae-hyun left the training center and headed to the medical bay. There he found Dr. Tae-woo working with refugee medical teams. The beings freed from the swarm hive mind had needed extensive treatment. Many had forgotten how to be individuals. Some had species memories going back millions of years but did not know their own names. How are they doing? Tae-hyun asked. Tae-woo looked tired but satisfied. Better every day. We have established contact with over 8,000 distinct species that were preserved in the hive mind. Most are adapting well to individual consciousness again. He gestured to a nearby room where several refugees were participating in what looked like an art class. They were creating things, expressing individual creativity for the first time in millions of years. Some are struggling, Tae-woo admitted. Being alone in your own mind after so long in a collective consciousness is traumatic. But they are surviving, just like we taught them. Earth has agreed to accept 5 million refugees for settlement, Tae-hyun said. We are clearing land in areas that were abandoned during the war. Tae-woo raised an eyebrow. Are your people ready for that? Sharing Earth with aliens? They will learn, Tae-hyun said. Besides, Earth is big, and after everything we have been through, I think we understand that different does not mean dangerous. That evening, Tae-hyun attended a memorial service. It was held in a chamber open to space, protected by energy fields that let people see the stars. Thousands gathered there, humans and aliens standing together. Captain Yoonji led the ceremony. She had been promoted to admiral after the war but still preferred her old rank. She stood at the front, her dress uniform perfect, her face solemn. We gathered to remember those who gave everything so that we could be here today, Yoonji said. Her voice was quiet but carried to everyone in the chamber. Humans, council species. Even former swarm beings who died in the transition. They all made the ultimate sacrifice. Names scrolled across holographic displays, thousands of them, tens of thousands, each one a person with hopes and dreams and people who loved them. We cannot bring them back, Yoonji continued, but we can honor them by being worthy of their sacrifice, by building the peace they died to protect, by showing that their courage meant something. After the ceremony, Tae-hyun found Yoonji standing alone, looking out at the stars. He joined her in silence for a moment. Do you ever regret it? he asked quietly. The choices we made. All the people we lost? Yunji thought for a long time before answering. Every day. But I do not regret doing what was necessary. We could have destroyed the swarm, it would have been easier. But then we would have become the thing we feared. Monsters who destroy anything different or dangerous. The precursors created us to be weapons, Taiwan said. But we chose to be something else. Yunji finished. That is what makes us human. Not what we were designed to be, but what we choose to become. Elsewhere on the station, Professor Minho was giving a lecture to council scientists about human evolution. But he was not talking about violence or predation. He was talking about cooperation. Yes, humans are survivors, Minho explained. Yes, we evolved on a death world. But the secret to our success was not individual strength. It was working together. Humans alone are weak, but humans in groups can accomplish anything. He brought up images of human history. Not wars, but achievements. The first time humans worked together to hunt large prey. The first agricultural communities. The first cities. The first time humans reached for the stars. Every major step in human evolution required cooperation, Minho said. The lone human does not survive. The community does. That is the real lesson Earth teaches. Engineer Junho was in his workshop now working on peaceful projects. He was designing new engines that would help refugee ships find new homes. The same creativity that had made weapons now made tools for building. A young alien apprentice, one of the former swarm refugees, worked beside him. She had been part of the hive mind for thousands of years but was learning to think independently now. Why do you help us? She asked Junho. Your people suffered so much because of the swarm. Junho paused in his work. Because you are not the swarm anymore. You are individuals trying to survive just like we were, and because if we only helped people who never hurt us, we would never help anyone. Everyone has done something wrong. What matters is what you choose to do now. The apprentice thought about this and went back to work, a small smile on her face. On Earth itself, in a park built where a military base used to stand, children played. They were a mix of species now. Human children running alongside alien children, all laughing and playing together. An elderly woman sat on a bench watching them. She had lived through first contact, through the war, through everything. She had seen her world nearly destroyed and then saved. A young human boy ran up to an alien child, one with scales and multiple arms. Want to play? The human boy asked. What game? The alien child responded in careful English, still learning the language. Anything, the boy said with a shrug. We can make up new rules together. The old woman smiled. That was the future right there. Not humans alone. Not aliens alone, but everyone together, making up new rules as they went. In the council chamber, Velthar accessed the precursor archives one more time. He had been doing research, trying to understand the full scope of what had been planned millions of years ago. He found a final message, one that had been locked until certain conditions were met. Earth joining the council as a full member, the swarm being freed, peace being established, the message activated and a hologram appeared, a precursor, and being of pure energy, ancient beyond measure. If you are watching this, the precursor said, then everything worked. Not the way we planned, but better. We created the death worlds hoping to forge weapons. We were desperate and afraid, and we made our choices from fear.